Welcome to Worldwide Business. I'm Kathy Ireland. While financial institutions are losing a significant amount of revenue, over half of it can be recovered by correcting erroneous core banking system settings. Lodestone Banking helps their clients to consistently add recurring revenue without cutting staff, increasing fees, savings, cost cuts, closing branches, or changing loan loss reserves. President and CEO Shahin Clark is here to tell us all about it. Welcome, Shahin.
Well, thank you, Kathy, for having me.
Well, Shahin, in your opinion, why are financial institutions losing so much revenue?
Bankers run by finance department. And finance, the tools and techniques and reports that they have doesn't pinpoint where they're losing money. So consequently, they go after cost cuts. Cost cuts can be expense and definitely FTE, employee, and also fee increases, which obviously generates income, but in a negative fashion. The way we do the consulting is without all that. When I was working in my prior experience, I have done analysis of every department. So I know how they operate. I know how one area affects the other. And what we do is, because of that knowledge, what we do is we drop those silos, which is departments. We drop them and we look at the bank horizontally. What that does is the information flows through the bank, doesn't just stay generate in one area of the bank. So by looking at the revenue through horizontal view and looking at it in especially 50% of what we find is in core banking systems. And that's the area a lot of bankers have fear to go into because of lack of that knowledge. And especially, I have to emphasize, tools, techniques, and methodology that we bring into a bank. They can't find it on their own, unfortunately.
And can you speak more to how your company helps clients add revenue in an innovative way?
As you know, banking industry is highly regulated,
right,
especially in the United States. And our recommendations generate the revenue that is fully compliant. And how we do that is we use special techniques and tools that I have come up with and invented. And we use those to identify, isolate, and pinpoint where they're losing the money. And we generate $1 million in recurring revenue to $1 billion in assets that the bank has, which is unusual in the banking industry to generate that.
In this Worldwide Business Field Report, we take a closer look at Lodestone Banking and their solutions for finding lost banking revenue.
All financial institutions are losing a significant amount of revenue, which is not from fee increases, savings, or cost cuts of any kind. In fact, over 50% of this revenue can be achieved by correcting erroneous core banking system settings. Lodestone Banking digs deep and consistently adds $1 million in recurring revenue per $1 billion in assets without cutting staff, increasing fees, savings cost cuts of any kind, closing branches, or changing loan loss reserves.
The annual revenue improvement working with Lodestone Banking for the benefit of Community Bank has been in excess of $5 million annually, which is a significant part of our annual earnings and amounts to 3 to 4% increase in earnings per share for Community Bank. So Lodestone has been highly beneficial to our shareholders and to Community Bank in terms of our earnings capabilities.
Lodestone Banking only consults to banks and has developed a process for finding and correcting errors in all areas of bank profitability. Lodestone enhances core banking system settings, enabling banks to achieve maximum revenue from the core system, which is near the top costs of what bankers pay to run their institutions.
I think the value that Lodestone brings to CEOs is the ability to uncover earnings that we would not otherwise be able to uncover on our own. Shahin Clark is a systems expert. She uses certain systems tools. She uses queries and algorithms to identify these mismatches between what you think you're charging and what you're actually charging, and how the system works based on certain fields and flags that are embedded deep within the system to improve its revenue streams associated with those fees.
Over the last 21 years, Lodestone Banking has consistently added annual revenue to their banking clients, which translates into hundreds of millions in shareholder value.
And you saw this need so many years ago, and you came up with an incredible solution. What inspired you to do that?
When I started in the banking industry, I started working for a Marine Midland bank, which was acquired by HSBC. It was a $35 billion asset bank. And they always looked for cost cuts, unfortunately. And being in the consulting aspects and departments of the bank, I was put in charge in reducing the staffing. And unfortunately, we had to reduce it from 16,000 to 8,000 employees. And they used to do that. I was involved, I hate to say it, but they used to do that. And right before the Christmas holidays, the pink slips would be out, which was painful to see. So that really set a bad example for me, and put me in a position that I wanted to increase the earnings of the banks, because everybody, they're up for profit organizations. Sure. To increase the earnings without laying off people, without increasing the fees, which you see nowadays. And that's how I came up with the recurring revenue strategies we have now, and the earnings that we produce totally is not a one-time shot. As I say, it's a recurring, and generates income year after year, and it produces $1 million per $1 billion in assets for the bank. So it's very different from any other consulting, but that was the trigger for me, and made me try to do something that doesn't involve staff reduction, because that is the avenue, unfortunately, every bank goes after to do.
Shahin, how does that make you feel? I mean, that you have come up with this way to not only serve clients so powerfully, but to protect so many jobs.
It feels fantastic, and I have clients actually, when they approach me, they approach because that's all they know: cost cuts and staff reduction. When they approach me, I said, "That's fantastic. Let's talk about that another time. Right now, let's talk about I have a product which does not touch those avenues, those staff reductions. Let's do this for your bank." And if at the end of it, the revenue that's generated still warrants you to do staffing, go and do your staffing. But by doing this, you save a lot of staff, it's a lot of employees' job.
And Shahin, can you speak to the benefits of retaining Lodestone banking?
The shareholder value, not reducing your staff. And also what we do is when we are done with a bank, we leave the banks with tools and techniques that we allow them to follow and use after we are gone. So the analysis doesn't stop. It would become a living environment, living tools and techniques for them.
Shahin, do you have competition?
No, Lodestone owns this space.
Don't accounting firms do what you do?
Accounting firms have a purpose. They're good for what they do. They look at the bank from the finance side of the house. They all look at cost cuts and increasing fees for the banks. They do not have the tools and techniques, methodology. It's simple to say it, but it's a lot into it, because what we do is we dive very deep into areas of the banks that nobody else dares to jump in. If you make a small change in one area, you have to know what other items, what other areas of the bank is going to be affected, positive and negative ways. So practically every core banking system that's out there, I know how they behave, I know their pitfalls, I know their positive and negatives, and I have no problem diving in and looking at them and read them and making changes to it. And as I said, 51% of our income comes from making profitable enhancement to the core banking system of the bank, which runs the whole bank.
Shahin, it appears Lodestone Banking is helping banks recover a significant amount of lost revenue. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Kathy.